This is Adam.
Mr. Homo sapiens to you.
Sapiens is such a substantial, secure-sounding name. I was afraid at first. Suddenly, all around me was the world. Very scary, the world. Frightening, even. But then he told me about you. And at the first mention of your name, I knew that I could never get lost, or mistake the wrong way, or lose my path. Not with your hand leading me.
We have had some very nice weather in and around this place.
That's not hitting it head on.
Let me find out where it's safe to hit first. Some words look too soft, others as if they're not permanently attached long enough to make contact.
There's no need to kid ourselves. Man and woman were just not meant for each other.
You don't have to go.
I feel myself going now. I'm so sorry my being wasted a part of your day.
I said don't go.
Sometimes these things just don't work out. We just have to be adults and admit that we are incompatible.
You have to stay.
Don't try to be noble. I need to be wanted. That was one of the provisions in the contract.
I do want you.
Want is such an easy word to say. Goodbye.
Eve.
I can't hear that voice I loved anymore. I wonder if they will allow me memories where I'm going. Speak again, it will help me remember.
If you come back, I'll play the game.
Yes. I will have something of you to hold on to for all the sad, lonely eons ahead of me. Something to put away from the dust.
I said I'll play the game if you only come back.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I'll play the damn game.
Welcome to Conversations with William M. Hoffman. Our guest today, for the first of a two-part chat, is a celebrated playwright and play producer and my old friend Doric Wilson. Conversations is Lehman College's series of discussions with major theater and musical figures of our time. Welcome to Conversations, Doric.
Thank you.
It's so good to see you here.
Good to see you, William.
We go back longer, pre-Civil War.
Pre the flood.
We just watched your very first play, And He Made a Her, in a delightful student production at the Boston Conservatory.
Yes.
That was your very first play?
Yes, at the Chino.
At the Chino.
I had written in school for my English class a very, very long blank verse play filled with symbolism called The Moon is August.
Wow.
And my teacher failed me because she didn't think any of her students could write a play.
She failed you?
Yes. None of my students can write plays.
That's amazing.
Actually, my drama teacher came in and told her that the play was so bad there was no way I could have plagiarized it. That wouldn't exist in print.
Now, for those of our audience who don't know what the Cafe Chino was, could you tell us what it was?
There's a little coffee house on Commerce Street in the village.
Cornelia Street.
Cornelia Street, sorry, yes. I used to live off of Commerce. Cornelia Street. It was, in the late 50s, early 60s, the coffee houses in the village were very popular for poets. The whole beat generation of poets were giving readings. They also started to do plays. And Joe Chino had this little coffee house where they did some poetry readings, Greek dancing, a little of everything. And they started doing plays. And an actress named Regina Oliver, Paxton Whitehead had done a production of this play for a workshop we were involved in. And she saw it, she said, "Oh, you have to come with me, I'll take you down to the Chino, and he'll do the play." And it was snowing, and she brought me into the Chino, my little script in hand. And Joe was busy making coffee. And I tried to give him the script, and he instead gave me a cup of cappuccino. Did not want to look at the script. Asked me what my astrological sign was. I told him Pisces, and he said, December 19th. I said, no, February 24th. He said, no, your play opens December 19th.
Without having read it?
Without having read it. Years later, I ran into John Guare, who had exactly the same story of Joe said, I don't do new plays. I only do plays by Geminis. And John pulled out his wallet and said, I'm a Gemini, I'm a Gemini. And Joe gave him a date. But it was that simple.
Now, since the days that I, of course, worked at the Cafe Chino as well, a little bit after you came in, and I missed your early plays, unfortunately. And since then, the Cafe Chino, thanks to the efforts of Robert Patrick, has really been memorialized
Yes.
as an important playwright,
Venue.
for playwrights. Very important, along with the La Mama Experimental Theater Club, and a very important place indeed. You're both a playwright and a producer.
I started out almost inadvertently producing my own plays.
Right.
And I was very nasty as a producer. As a producer, I didn't accept my plays as they were and made the playwright cut them in half usually. But I started producing and directing and writing. Along the way, then I started doing other people's plays from the very beginning.
Now, recently, you've received a number of important awards, and this year you were elected a member of the National Theater Alliance, and you received a Career Achievement Award from the Association for Theater and Higher Education.
Yes.
And in 2007, you received the Innovative Theater Award from whom?
It is just the Innovative Theater Awards. That's what they are. Lifetime Achievement.
And the Robert Chesley Award for Lifetime Achievement in Gay and Lesbian Playwriting. And I'm glad to hear that you started writing again. And this is a very exciting development.
I kind of stopped when AIDS hit. Most of my plays deal with the lesbian and gay experience.
Right.
And when AIDS hit, I did not want to bother to write an AIDS play. Everybody else, including you, were writing very, very brilliantly on the subject. There was nothing I needed to say. So I've finally come back. I think I will have a new play very soon.
That's very exciting. I can't wait. I'll be there.
You're not the only person.
We'll beat it out of you if you don't do it. You're best known as a producer, as associated with and you're a co-founder of Tussos, The Other Side of
Yes.
Silence.
I was part of the Stonewall riots. Like the Chino, I accidentally ended up at the Chino. I accidentally was walking up Christopher Street the night the riot started and got involved. We became very involved with the early days of gay liberation. And the more I was around the politics of gay liberation, the more I realized that politics and I were not necessarily good bedfellows. And so I decided to start a theater to make a place where people who were writing on the subject of their gay lifestyle. I hate the term gay. That's why I keep stuttering. I've never liked that word.
What word would you like
I
to
prefer to use queer, or but
Go ahead.
but out of context, it doesn't belong there. Gay is the right word. And so I started to create what was going to be an art center. We were going to do plays, music, painting, poetry, various expressions of the gay culture. And, what is it, gay, GDL, I can never remember those letters.
LGBT.
LGBT, thank you. Very quickly it turned out that the artists and the poets and the rest of them didn't want to do the work. Only the theater people were willing to do
We're used to it.
We're used to doing the work, so it quickly became a theater. We didn't want the word gay in the name. That's why that came up. So a poet friend of mine gave us the title, The Other Side of Silence, claiming it was a quote from Emily Dickinson. Well, it turns out it was not a quote from Emily Dickinson, and a wonderful actor named Billy Blackwell refused to call it The Other Side, so he just took the initials and we became Tussos. And everybody decided it was a Greek word. And we just never bothered telling anybody it wasn't. And
Now, how did a kid who grew up in a ranch in Washington State, how did you get to New York? What happened?
I became kind of conscious of the world right at the very end of World War II on the ranch. And I was doing essentially plays in the barn, but I'd never seen a movie. We had radio, but because the war was on, it was an old crystal set. It only went on for the news. You didn't listen to the radio programs because Grandpa was never sure you could get another crystal for the crystal set, because it was wartime, and that was an impossible thing to get. I have no idea, but I started doing plays. I started producing, writing, and directing with my poor cousins. They were either Westerns or King Arthur and its Court. Those are the two books I read.
So as far as you knew, you were inventing theater.
Well, actually, in my first grade was in a one-room schoolhouse, and we did do a Christmas play, and I've been reminded that I was in the Christmas play. I have no
Right.
memory of it, so I obviously had been in a play before that.
You went to the University of Washington,
Yes.
and you were a member of the drama department.
Yes. And within a month of my getting there, there was a park right next to the University of Washington, a deep ravine called Ravenna Park. And somebody was shooting down, gays would hang there at night, and when they would light their cigarettes, somebody was shooting down at the park like at a duck kill, shooting the people. And they'd killed 4 or 5 gays in the park. And when I found out about it, a friend of mine, somebody I knew had been shot, not, well, thank God, killed, but had been shot on the arm. I cut a mimeograph flyer, mimeograph
Right.
machines. God forbid you ever have to use mimeograph machines. And a flyer and was handing out, warning people about what, because nobody was warning. The cops weren't doing anything about it. Nobody, it turns out and so anyway, I created this one-man protest. And I was quickly told by the university not to bother to take my test. I would not be coming
So
back.
you were a premature gay activist.
Yes, that old premature anti-Nazi, yes.
That's amazing. In 1959, you moved to New York City.
Yes,
And in 61, you ended up at the Cafe Chino.
yes.
What was it like when you got to the Chino in 1961? Was it a popular place, or?
Well, it kind of was the second, according to Robert Patrick, it was my play that made it popular. And He Made It Her was a huge hit. It's ironic because I've always been an atheist and I've more or less always been out. And my first play is an Adam and Eve play, a heterosexual Judaic Christian myth. Sort of a funny place to start a homosexual atheist career.
Oh, that's fabulous. What other plays did you write
At the
aside
Chino? The next play actually still is around in a longer version. Since I was thrown out of the University of Washington, I was being self-educated, or I was self-educating myself. And I just read all of Oscar Wilde, and I stumbled upon Salome,
Right.
and could not figure out what the blank this was about, or why he wrote it. Then I discovered it had been written for Bernhard and the whole history. So I decided to rewrite it as the importance of being earnest. And in the process of rewriting it, making Salome, automatically Oscar Wilde became the John the Baptist figure. And it became a metaphor for the trial of Oscar Wilde. And as the play grew and grew and grew, and it went through all sorts of changes from a one act to a full length, it's this weird nightmare of the characters from Salome as if they were at a Victorian tea party with a modern stand-in, gay, innocent off the sidewalk stand-in for Oscar Wilde in the trial, and obviously beheading. He gets beheaded. His head is brought on the stage by the butler under a tea cozy to keep it warm.
And now she dances.
Now she dances.
That's
And then the other two plays were, one was used the Chino itself, called Babble Babble Little Tower, where the lead actress was acting, Jane Lowry was acting like a waitress in the Chino, and comes up to a customer sitting at one of the tables of the Chino, and the play starts. And he takes the coffee cups of the other people at the table, hands them to them, and moves the table to the center of the room. Then he gets another table and he starts building a tower. Thus, Babble, Babble, Little Tower. Various people fight to take the tower over, and at the end, a cop comes in from the outside. In the days when the police were shutting down the Chino, or coffee houses, and comes in and shuts it down.
You started to write plays. Other people started to bring plays to the
Almost immediately, yeah.
almost immediately, and that's when I came into the
Yeah.
Cafe Chino, and I wrote my first plays. If it weren't for Joe, I'd never be a playwright.
Yeah.
Joe
Well,
Chino
there's a long
is the
list of
father of
long-
my playwriting
There's a
career.
long list of us.
Yeah. Among them was Lanford Wilson,
Yes.
and I thought we would like to see a segment of The Madness
So
of Lady Bright.
We did a production recently, Tossos, my theater company, with Michael Lynch playing Leslie Bright. I love it.
And you did that where? At the Duplex?
Duplex down in the village.
That's the production we're going to see.
Not good. Not good at all. All those spidery little wrinkles showing your age. Exposing yourself, aren't you? And a gray hair or two. And your whole face just collapsing. Built like a disaster. Oh, do go away. You should be preserved somewhere. You are a very rare specimen that should be saved for posterity. Lowered into the La Brea tar pits in a time capsule. As a little piece of the 20th century that didn't quite come off. Party. No, we'll have a cotillion, a royal dance!
Wonderful!
Lady Bright requests your presence.
A beautiful party!
May I have the pleasure?
I hardly know what to say.
And I should be the queen. I should be selected queen by popular demand. I dance like a flower on the water. I dance like a flower. And I shall dance with Adam, and you dance with whom you please. No, I have no more room on my program. I am dreadfully sorry, young man. I am dancing with only one man tonight, and you know what that means.
Oh, she's so lovely.
She's so beautiful.
Did you catch her name?
Her name is Giselle. I'm Giselle.
That's a remarkable production. Michael is so...
Michael is just, the original Tossos did that play with Billy Blackwell in the role.
Right.
And very frequently, the actors that are playing there are also playing transsexual and then playing Lady Bright. Michael is a transsexual, and so he doesn't have, that's there, that's a given. And so he doesn't do anything, he just plays what's going on. He's brilliant in that. He's good in street theater also as well.
We're going to see that
Yeah.
next show.
Yeah.
Shortly after that that period, you became involved with the Bar Wilder Albee
Yes, the playwrights unit down at Van Dam Street.
and also the founding of Circle
Circle
Rep.
Rep, yes.
I was very heavily involved with Circle Rep, which later produced As
Yeah,
Is.
As Is, yes.
So our careers have been strangely out of sync, but intertwined.
Yes, all of us at that period is sort of like one of us went through the door and the other one came in right after.
Right.
You know, but,
What was it like working at the Bar Wilder Albee?
it was kind of strange. It's when I began to realize that the Chino had a very big effect on me. And I hadn't quite realized yet what it had done. And I liked the Bar Wilder Albee, but somehow the more uptown it all became, wasn't working for me. And I think it was at Bar Wilder Albee that I realized I was working on a play for them, and I couldn't finish it. I didn't care. I didn't want it up on that stage for some reason. I was blocked. And it took me a couple of years to finally realize that I like what the Chino was. I love creating theater where theater doesn't exist. In a bar, I like it to almost like magic grow out of the ground. So somehow coming into a space, rank and file, has never worked for me.
I think we were all affected by the Chino experience, and it's very hard to describe describe it to people who weren't there, but
First of all, there was no stage. There was no space. This carpet that we're on is almost as large as the stage was.
and we were doing full productions.
We were doing full productions. I mean, somebody did an entire Voltaire's Candide with all of the characters cast. They'd come in and crawl out the back window and go through Milt's next door and come back around, costumed and cast. You
I
know.
remember seeing Little Mary Sunshine,
Yes.
full production numbers on this tiny stage.
The Boyfriend, Dames at Sea,
Right. With Bernadette
Bernadette
Peters.
Peters, yes.
To me, those were the golden days, and
Well, what I like about it is that you were forced to boil it down to the two essentials, the actor and the script. No, there was no set, or at best a set piece. The costumes were literally pulled out of dumpsters, and sometimes the dumpster came with them. What set was there? I mean, during And He Made Her, Joe put a new floor down in the Chino.
that was a big deal.
And they were building a high-rise about a block from the Chino, and they were going over at night and stealing the flooring that was being stacked up outside to go into this building. They'd come back, and each day they'd put a couple more feet down, and poor Jane Lowry, as Eve, entered from the street, and she would walk through the Chino. You hear her 3-inch high heels talking on the floor, and then there'd be a trip. And each night the trip would, of course, be a different place.
I remember that we got our electricity from the lamppost.
Yes,
That John Torrey, the lover of Joe Chino, hooked up the electricity from the street.
to the street lights. So the Chino didn't have light, particularly in the summer, until it got dark enough for the street lamps to go on. Then the Chino had electricity. So when you went in there in the daytime, there was no electricity. There was only candles.
I also remember what a catastrophe it was that Joe Chino, our mentor and our leader, committed suicide.
Yes.
And we were all bereft.
I was so angry at him, I would have found him and killed him. Had he not, I was so angry that he did that.
That was the end of an era, but the beginning of our careers in some ways.
Yes.
Perhaps we had to be.
Well,
fleshed
actually, no,
out
I
more.
was out of there. Joe and I had a disagreement about charging at the door, and I was really out of there in '62.
Right.
But for everybody else, Circle Rep then was forced to happen. Well, I think Marshall and them were over by that point over at La Mama anyway, I think.
No, we were in both places.
I guess, yeah.
What did you do then after the Chino?
I kept trying to write plays for Uptown, and they would never get finished. And I kept doing it and doing it and doing it. Then finally, and I got into Circle Rep, the playwrights unit. I could not finish a play. There's about 40 of them in various 2/3 to 3/3 finished. And then Stonewall got involved in the movement, got involved in the bar business, saw a bar, visualized a play in that bar, and the play was done 3 weeks later.
I'm getting the high sign that we're through in our first part, and I've noticed how time has moved so quickly. I wanted to thank you, Doric, and our home and studio audiences for joining us today, and we hope to see you again soon for part 2 of my conversation with Doric Wilson. We're going to go out on some footage from New York Minutes, a show about the wonderful music of John Wallowich.
Come into my house, a little magic, a glow of candlelight.
Come into my house and spend the evening, or you can stay the night.
I'll show you every precious treasure and plaything, and as an extra added measure,
My heart,
come into my world, a trace of sorrow. of morning floats into the day. Come into my house, my world, my life, and stay.
Come into my house. Come into my house. Come into my house. Come into my house. Oh, won't you come into my house? Please do come into my home.
Come into my house, a little magic, the glow of candlelight. Come into my house,
Come into my house, a little magic.
or you can stay the night.
I'll show you every precious treasure and plaything. And as an extra